My name is Erik Johnson. I work for SaltStack. I've been a contributor for close to 2 years now. I started out as a contributing just to try to get it to work with my last job, which is as a system admin, and eventually became one of the top contributors and took a job as a paid developer back in June. So that's the background on me. What we're going to do today is we're going to show how we can use Salt to manage different platforms, different Linuxes, and even FreeBSD using the same configuration syntax for things such as packages and services, creating users, etc. So the slips that you got, they should all contain four IP addresses and passwords. The Ubuntu one is the one you're going to use the one you're going to want to use as that's the master for this. That's where you're going to need to log into. Later on, you can pick another one of the hosts to log into for some of the stuff we might get to later. But the majority of the time, that's all you should need to do is that's the only box you should need to log into. So.
Should we log in as root?
Oh yes, yeah. I'm sorry. It's the root user for all those. So I guess I'll does anybody need a second before to get logged in before we go any further? Or? Everybody's got their own environment to play around in, so you should be the only one logged in.
I have a question.
Yes.
So do I need to be slamming in the wireless network?
Yeah.
PS1 rocks.
PS1F rocks, like ROCKS.
No, I know.
And it's the number one.
I don't know what that is. If that's I think that's just what it thinks is the root. So you can change that. I'm not sure what that means.
Are you logged in? Okay.
Raise your hand if you're not with us, if you're not logged in.
I'm not logged in yet.
Okay. All right, I can continue just with a little brief introduction then while everybody's continuing to get logged in. So Salt is, it's first and foremost a remote execution engine. It allows you to run commands on a number of hosts at the same time in parallel and receive back the results asynchronously. You can use it to just run functions or arbitrary shell commands, or you can do more complex things like configuration management and things of that nature. It's all powered by there's an event bus on which the master listens to and also publishes commands to, and so let's see. I have my notes here. So as I mentioned, that Ubuntu box you're logging into is that's what's known as the master, and that's where you manage all of you can manage all your nodes from. The nodes, the clients themselves, they're called minions, and so they're going to make a persistent connection. So that this is an outbound connection, meaning that you don't have to have a port open on the minion. Just there's two ports 4505 and 4506 on the master. So all the minions will connect into the master and just stay there connected and wait for instructions. And so that allows them to be very responsive, and it keeps you from having to initiate a separate TCP connection for every single action that you want to take. So the connections are based off of their based off of the ZeroMQ messaging library. I'm not sure if anybody's heard of that. Let's see. Yeah, so the some of the other things that you can do that we probably won't have time to get to today, but I'll have some notes at the end for further reading that you can acquaint yourselves with them. Is you can set up actual like virtual machine instances. I didn't actually do that for this demonstration, but you can actually automatically spin up new virtual machines using the APIs for OpenStack, etc. So you can spin up new VMs on DigitalOcean, Linode, some of the other ones. Rackspace, that's OpenStack. There's a whole bunch of them, most of which escape me at this moment. But so you can also use it to manage your local cloud using libvirt. So it can interface with libvirt, and so you can manage both private and public cloud instances. You can also do orchestration, which means you can set up different stages. So if you have something where if stage 1 would fail, you wouldn't want to proceed to stage 2. You can set it up so that you execute your instructions in stages. So let's see. So is everybody a chance to connect? Okay, that's not. The Ubuntu one's the one you want to do that. Want to be connected to. That's the master in this in all these environments. All right, so I think I've stalled enough. So the first thing we do we want to do is we can take a look. I've already pre-authed all the machines, all of the minions with the master. So if you run salt key -uppercase L, you're going to see a bunch of. Let me stop my. Okay. You'll see all 4 nodes there, including the actual one you're logged into, because the master can also be a minion. It can have both running. So if you want to see what would happen, yes.
An exception.
What?
Out of range. Let's index out of range.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I got.
What box are you logged into?
I'm going to 15.
Okay. Can you? I don't know. Maybe that one wasn't set up properly. I had to do a lot of by hand stuff. Maybe you want to try to sign into one of the other ones.
Oh, I thought it was.
Yeah. Uppercase L. That didn't work. Okay.
Yeah, it's up for it.
Okay. Yeah. So normally normally what you do with a new minion when you point it at the master is let me delete the. So this is how you would with a new minion for the first time connecting, it would show up in the unaccepted keys, and you can either do -A and then the node name, which I'm not going to type out again, or uppercase A will just accept all.
You have your terminal a little bit higher up, or the back behind you, it's just at the bottom.
Okay.
Just clear your terminal so you can see it.
Yeah. Okay.
What does this do? Salt -E -A?
Yeah. So -A is going to accept all pending keys, or you could just do a lowercase a and the node name. So in this case, I'm going to accept it, and then you'll see it shows up in the list of accepted keys. But
Okay, well, that shouldn't happen for us because I've already accepted.
yeah. That I was just showing you how the process was for accepting a new key. So first thing we should do now that we know we've got all four, we've got 4 nodes that we can manage, is we can run our first command. So we'll run the most simple command we can, which is it's just called test.ping. So all that is it's just something it's just a one-line Python function that returns true. And it just basically tests the communication. It's not an actual ping, but it's saying it's confirming that the master can send a command to the minion and the minion can properly respond back. So as we see, we got all 4 machines that all 4 of them responded. So that's the most basic thing we can do, and it's kind of confirming that the communication is working both ways. Next, we can look at something called grains, which are there's a lot of salt metaphor, a lot of salt plant. That's far from the first. Just get ready just brace yourselves for the amount of the amount of salt metaphors. So if we type in grains.items, you're going to get a lot of information. This is all basic. This is all static information about. Oh yeah, hold on. Grains.items. So if I run that, you see that you get just a bunch of information about each. This is just for the Ubuntu guy right here. See things like, well, here on the CentOS 6 actually, but you can see interface information. You can see the operating system, our CPU architecture, things like that. So this is all stuff that you can use. You can make use of in your config files, and also when you're running your commands, because you can target based on grains as well as other things.
These are all so the path there is from the environment on the Ubuntu box, right?
Yeah, those paths were like the Python path for that.
Okay.
For that Ubuntu box, yeah. So if you want to narrow down to a single grain item, you use grains.item, not items. And so if we want to just get the OS, we can see that we got a FreeBSD, OpenSUSE, Ubuntu, and CentOS. You can see they're all showing the operating system name. And then you can also see if you use OS_family, certain ones are based off of others. So OpenSUSE is based on SUSE, Ubuntu's based on Debian, etc. And then, just as another example, kernel, you can see that the SUSE, CentOS, and Ubuntu, they all show up as Linux. FreeBSD shows up as FreeBSD. So that's grains. Now the foundation for actually serving up files and doing configuration management is based requires what's called the Salt file server. So if I look at the config file, and there we go. It's etc salt master. If we look at that, and let me get a less horrible color scheme here. Slightly less horrible. So we'll see this simple few lines here. The file roots section. So here you can set up multiple environments. For this demo, I'm only doing base. So the base environment should always be defined at, if you're using no other environments, base is the one you should be using. And we see that the root of that environment is /srv/salt. There's also some of the data we're going to get. Some of the data that we're going to use in our configuration management directives utilize user-defined variables, which are called salt pillars. So those are configured in a similar fashion. They have their own root of where you set up those user-defined variables, and that's pillar roots, as you can see here in the. So those are the things that Those should be configured on all of your demo environments. Okay. So if we go to serve salt, and we notice that there's a file in there called top.sls, and so that's the file where you configure all of your where you assign all of your SLS files. The SLS stands for salt state files. States are basically they're the configuration management directives. So if we look at top.sls, it's very simple, and we've only got one assigned there for now, and it's users. And you can see here that we're defining on the first line, we're defining the environment. That's the base environment. The second line is a target type. So in this case, the default is to use a hostname glob. So in this to the if you don't define the is that okay? Good. All right. So if you don't define what master IP, the master IP address or host name is in that config file, it's going to look for in the current DNS search domain. It's going to look for something called salt. That's like, so if you have if you have local internal DNS and you have like salt dot your internal domain, and that's set up as your search domain in your DNS and all the nodes there, then it's gonna go to that. Otherwise, you can manually configure it. Like what I've done for this is I just put the master IP address in the etc host file and called it salt, and the minion config file that you guys should see on your on each of your minions should actually, I believe, have nothing. It should have everything commented out still, because by default all it needs is to be pointed at the master, and that's it. And then once you start up the service, it's going to try to check in, and it's going to check in with its key, and it's going to try to do a key authentication with the master. And if it's already been accepted, then it will authorize that, and it will be in your list of nodes that you can manage. Otherwise, it would show up as one of those pre-accepted keys, like when I deleted it and re-authenticated it. Like it'll show up in that list, that red list of unaccepted. And so that's the process of actually getting a minion connected and it is an EPL, or Apple, some tomato. So there's a salt minion package, which I'm actually the packager for. And there's also a salt master package, and then there's just like a salt, like a common, just like a salt package that has the bulk of the libraries in it, and so there is a package, and so you can start up the service on whatever platform whatever init system you're using, and it's usually just called salt-minion, except for I think on FreeBSD, I think dashes are not allowed, and it's salt_minion. I think maybe the same with Solaris. Not sure. We don't have a lot of Solaris users, but yeah. So is that properly? And okay, cool. No, it's actually going over a 0MQ connection, and so it's using it's using a private key setup. Yeah.
It doesn't use like a library that's already.
Not yet, because ZeroMQ, until the version was just released within the past month or so, until that was released, ZeroMQ did not actually have encryption built into it. So we're actually encrypting all the payloads before they're sent over the ZeroMQ connection, using the keys that are generated by the minion, using the public key so it'll send its public key to the master, and so right now that would be considered suboptimal from like a security standpoint, but with ZeroMQ4, which is slowly making its way to the various repositories, it uses an elliptic curve cryptography library. Yeah.
SaltStack does have an agent. I thought it was agentless.
It by default it does use an agent. And there is an agentless SSH based transport that's brand new actually, as of our last major feature release.
Okay.
So it can be used in an agentless way, but that's not the default. And I would say SaltStack is still relatively new, so there may still be some kinks that have yet to be worked out.
Do you know approximately when that was beta or released?
When what was released?
The Salt SSH version?
It was released with 0.17, which has been out for about a month.
Okay.
So like in the various repositories that for which we have it packaged, most if not all would already have it available. If you did it from the repository, if you install it out of like our PPA or our Debian repo or EPL or whatever, you're going to get a version that supports it. But I would say some of the earlier versions, just because it was still it's still new, there might still be a few kinks that we need to work out, because it's a brand new feature. So your mileage may vary. So I described the first and the second line here. The first line being the environment base, the second line being like the target. This target's going to target all servers, and it's going to use this user's config file. If we notice here in the root of serve salt, there actually isn't a users.sls. There's a users directory, and if we list the files there, you'll see that there's an init.sls, similar to if anybody's done like any Python module development. There's if you're writing a Python module and you want to have like a module name that's organized in a directory, it's the _init.py. It's I guess it's sort of modeled after that. So this is just done for better organization, because I got two files in here, two different users examples. So if we look at, is this still visible there? Okay. Let me actually just open it in VI. So here we have the top line here being the user that we want to configure, and the second line, we know this is indented two spaces. This is YAML. If everybody familiar with YAML? That's so this is indented two spaces, and we see that we want to have this user be present. Then underneath it, indented, we have a list of parameters, and you can see these are all. You can see a bunch of these curly braces and this pillar information here. So the pillar, that was that user defined variable that we had. So, and that's the stuff that's in it's in that /srv/pillar. And So here's that user data. And so here we have the full name, the password, and we even have a list of groups, or actually we just have a single group, but in this list. And we notice up here at the top, there's this logic here that sets the admin group to sudo if it's Ubuntu, because Ubuntu likes to be weird like that, and they don't use wheel. So we basically said that we were going to have this Mo user be in the whatever group is the wheel type group for that platform. So these everything here with the curly brace, this is Jinja templating. This is the default templating language that Salt uses, and so this is what allows us to it allows us to do like looping and flow control, like if else things like that in your config files, and just allows you to make more dynamic config files and ones that are a lot smaller. So you don't have to repeat a lot of lines if everything's the same for like for instance for user management, like we're about to do. So here in this this multi-level dictionary of user data, you can see this where we're pulling all of Mo's user data. And does this make sense to everybody so far?
Could you just name the directives? So like on the first line we have, I can't see that, but that's it. No.
Yeah, that's the username.
So what would you call that? This is a YAML, right?
Yeah, so this actually has a name. It's actually called an ID declaration. It's just basically like this is something that has to be unique. I'm not sure if it actually fails out or if it just warns you if there are multiple like same ID declarations. But in this case, this username is going to get passed through to whatever directive you're doing. So this the second line here. This is the actual state declaration. This is like what state we're going to run.
So if I was looking at documentation and I wanted to know all the state directives that I could specify, and here's just a case, but like, what would that mean? Like, where is that document? Like, what would that mean?
We do have a documentation page, and I actually have some links that I'll be sharing before yeah.
Oh, I'm just also wondering what type of information is usually being made available to the Jinja context for this. Like it looks like it's pretty much the grains and color information.
There's a lot of different things. Let me finish answering the. I probably should have waited, but so there's a. If you look in the table of contents, there's just a page called the full list of built-in states, and that's there's a similar one for what are called modules, which are like the modules that contain the stuff that actually does stuff, makes changes, gathers information, etc. So that's the page you want to look for. I suppose your question about the Jinja context, we have grains, we have pillar, we actually have all of the functions, the CLI functions that we like the grains dot whatever. So you could actually do the grains execution module actually has a function called get, which is similar to like Python dictionary dot get or whatever, where you could specify a default value if that grain wasn't defined on the host. So you could do something with you could do, instead of pillar, if you just replace that with salt, and then it would be bracket and then the function name, and then you could pass your arguments in parentheses. So this is a very simple example here with the user to actually deploy that, to actually deploy all stuff that's in the top.sls. You would use the instead of we did the grains dot items or grains dot item. We're going to do state dot high state. And that's, if we scroll back here, we'll see that on all the hosts, it's created a new user. And you can see here you see that, let's see, which host is this? This is the Sue's. So you can see he's wheel here, but he is, where's Ubuntu at? So he's sudo here. And that was based on that logic that we saw in that pillar configuration file where we put that little bit of logic that says the admin group is sudo if it's Ubuntu, otherwise it's wheel. And so so we were just able to use the same 4 lines or 5 lines or whatever of configuration code to deploy the same user and the same groups on all 4 platforms.
So that's what, that command, salt, and then the.
Yes.
Also state.high state?
Mm-hmm.
So what does the high state part mean?
The high state is all of the configuration that is specified in that top.sls file. So if we had we only have that one thing there, but if we had a whole bunch extra, then it would execute everything based on how it was configured. And you don't have to necessarily do if you look at that on that top file, you know how we were saying that we're going to push the users out to everybody with the star glob in that top.sls. We could do other kinds of matching as well, and just target Linux, just target Ubuntu, just there's other ways of targeting hosts. So that's my single user example I had. But you noticed if you remember from that pillar config file, which so we have 2 other users here. We have Larry and Curly here as well. And we may decide to even bring on Shemp and Curly Joe later on. And if you don't want to keep on adding configuration directives over and over again, what you can actually do is you can use this Jinja templating in your config file. So if we to give you a very dynamic user deployment setup. So if we look at this jinja.sls, you can see we actually have 2 loops. We have an outer loop and inner loop. So the outer loop is just using, if anybody that's familiar with Python would see this iter items, or you can just use items. You don't have to use iter items, but it's going to that user data pillar, and remember the first level key was the username, and then all of its stuff was under it in the lower levels. So the first loop here is giving you the user and its user, the dictionary for that user. On the very next line, here's the username. Here on line 2, and that same user.present that we had before. And then then we have another loop where it's going through each of those parameters: the password, the password hash, the groups or whatever for each user, and it's putting that key and value there. So if we run now we could go and edit that top file and replace it with users.jinja, because slashes or directory markers are replaced with dots in the when you're putting those names into your top.sls. But you can also run a single SLS file using a different command. Instead of state.sls, we're going to use instead of using state.highstate, we're going to use state.sls. And we're going to tell it to run users.jinja, because it was in serve salt users jinja.sls. And if we do that, you can see that the Mo user that was already deployed doesn't need any changes made to it. That's why it's green. It's already up to date. You can see the other users with their own password hash, full name, etc. They're all now deployed. And if we were to run this again, now that everything is deployed. You can see now that everybody is deployed, and they're basically anytime there's changes, your output would be in this cyan color. Anytime there doesn't need to be changes, it would be green. Anytime there's some sort of problem or it failed, it would be red. So you get a nice visual indicator of what was done or what needed to be done, or whether or not there were problems. So that's some user management. Another thing that's very important sometimes is to manage files, config files, and things like that. And so we're going to go over some file management using the Salt file server that we set up. So the example I have for this is it sets up a sudoers file. If we go to that serve salt sudo, you can see we have a files directory and an int.sls. So if we list the files in there, you can see I've got the default sudoers file from each host there. So this is the one that just came with the image. So if we were to try to deploy this right now, it would say it's already up to date. Let's take a look at the init.sls. And we got a couple things in here. And actually, technically, this is incomplete. There's one extra line I can put here, and I'll go over that in a moment. But first, we want to make sure that sudo is installed, because I know for a fact it doesn't come installed on the FreeBSD image that we had. I did install it before I cloned all of them, so it is already installed, but it doesn't come installed by default. So we have a directive here that says package.installed. So we want to make sure that the sudo package is installed. You notice here it doesn't have a colon at the end, and that's just one of many interesting idiosyncrasies that we have to deal with using YAML as the default config format. Just because it creates a different data structure. If you don't have any actual lines under it, like all these other lines for like the source user, if you don't have any other lines to put under it, then you just leave the colon off. We want to make sure that the sudo package is installed, but before we deploy this sudoers file, actually what we can do here is require that the package. If we put a require there, like I did, like I just added these two lines here. So what that means is that it won't try to do this. It won't try to do the etsy sudoers file unless sudo is installed. So you notice here I did because FreeBSD puts its config files for software that doesn't come with the default install in user local. I have this little Jinja piece here that says user local if it's a FreeBSD kernel, otherwise just an empty string, and that'll allow us to deploy the sudoers file to the right location. And then we notice here's another little Jinja replacement here, which is it'll take that OS grain that we printed out earlier. We did grains.item OS. And it's gonna apply the lower Python function to it, which is just gonna lowercase it, just because I didn't want to have to worry about case on those files. You noticed the files that I listed earlier; they were all lowercase. And so here's where we're setting up the ownership, the user and group ownership, and this is all kind of the default. I modeled this after the default. So the FreeBSD hosts wanted it had the ownership as root wheel, wheel for the group ownership, whereas all the Linux platforms were under the root group for group ownership. So And then here's the permissions for the file. So that all that should be pretty straightforward. Is there any questions on that before we try to deploy it? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and write those changes, and we are going to. I'm just going to continue using that state.sls, so I don't have to keep on editing the top.sls. That's what we call it, the top file. So I don't have to edit that every time. So we're going to do sudo. Oh, also, I didn't do this before. If you do test.true on any of these state functions, it actually does a dry run, kind of tells you what it would do. And in this case, it's all green because nothing needed to be done. So this is actually, if I took the test.true off, it still wouldn't do anything because it's already in the correct state. Sudo is already installed. The files, and we can see the files in the correct state. And we can see here the FreeBSD one, the path is user local. Let's see sudoers. So if I wanted to, let's say I wanted to add somebody to the sudoers file, but only on the CentOS hosts. If I can go in here and edit the CentOS one. I'm just going to add a line called Joe and give him all right. So I went ahead and added that. If we go ahead and do another.
Showing that again, it was down at the bottom.
Oh yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, let's see. So I just added like one line to the sudoers. Just added a user there. The usage for this should be in the examples earlier in the file. I probably could have just uncommented one of these lines as well. It doesn't really matter. What I did to make a change, just so long that I did make a change. So if we do that, we're going to do, actually, yeah. So we're going to run that state.sls sudo because it's this is sudo/init.sls, so it's still considered to be sudo, not sudo init. If we run that test equals true, we can see one of those came up as yellow that flew by. Let's go back up there and take a look at it. So the CentOS one now shows that we would be making a change here. It gives you a little diff with like a few context lines, like if you did a diff-u on the two files. That's basically what you're getting here. So it's saying that here these two lines, the plus next to it, are going to be added. So if we get rid of that test equals true, now we notice that, again, all the other boxes that did need to be changed still show up as green. Yes? What about it?
Just type clear so you can, type clear so you can see.
Well, this is what we're, okay.
Did you split your screen using like screen or something?
I'm using Tmux right now. You mean just like make sure that that's always,
Yeah, make sure it's always up.
Yeah.
Up further.
well, let's see. How much further?
Probably about right.
Okay. Well, we kind of, let me see. There we go. So if you see, you see here, we see the same thing we saw before in yellow, but now it's actually made those changes, so it's in the cyan. And if we were to run it again now, again, it's going to show up green across the board because everything's in the correct state. So no changes need to be made. Actually, it looks like it's still running. Oh, there we go. So obviously, sudoers is probably something that you shouldn't be editing without vi sudo. But so this is probably a bad example of what to do in practice. But it was just a simple example that I could think of of something that would be supported on all 4 hosts. So yes.
I was running it. This says this job JID is string integer value.
Yeah.
So does Salt just every time you run a command, it'll give it like some process ID type of thing?
Yeah. Because it.
Track of like your job. That's
Mhm.
happens.
Yeah. In fact, and this wasn't part of what I was going to do here, but if you want to run salt-run and then list underscore jobs, that's going to show you your job history. So it saves all of the results and everything that you could look them up later. Yeah. Yeah. So given that I knew I was only changing it for one host, I didn't actually necessarily need to do the star here. If you know you're only going to be doing it on CentOS, we actually target based on grains. So if I run the same command, like the same stall command, but I put -G, that's gonna instead of targeting making the target expression a glob, it's gonna make the target expression a grain. In this case, the OS grain with the colon being the delimiter. So we have an OS of CentOS. And if I were to run the same thing here, we notice that we're going to see it's only running it on that CentOS box. It didn't run it on the other three. So that was that's one other option for things like this, where you knew you were only modifying the pseudo-words file for that platform. You wouldn't necessarily have to run it on all the hosts. You could do that, or you could just, instead of doing star, you could have actually typed out the node name, or done a glob. You know, if you have your nodes named with the platform as part of in your naming scheme, you could even do instead of doing a grains match, you could do some sort of glob that takes that into account. So there's a lot of different ways to do it. I've shown quite a few examples of so far of like running states, but you can also run you can also run arbitrary shell commands. So command.run would be the command.run is going to run the command. It's going to return the output. So if I were to run command.run and do a tail etc sudoers, you can see here we have the last 10 lines of the sudoers file, and we can see our 2 new lines that we added at the bottom. And we just ran it on the CentOS box. You can also do command.run std out, or standard output. You can do the same thing with standard error, which will give us nothing. You can also do retcode. Retcode is going to give you 0 to 0 exit status. And if you do run _all, you actually get like a little data structure back, giving you the PID, the retcode, standard error, and standard output, and it's like a dictionary of return values. So you know what you can do with the commit. You have quite a bit of flexibility in what you do with running shell commands. So that's some simple like file management with and a little bit of package management. Next we're gonna look at some service management. So you see here, I just using like a simple Nginx with just the default like installation, nothing special. So I'll just have like the default like welcome page for the platforms that support it. I think the ones that don't will probably have like a 403 forbidden that shows up if you try to run it. Let's see. So this there's an nginx.sls here in the serve salt. So if we look at that, you notice we have this set up just a little bit differently, you know, than some of the other ones. The other ones had like the package.install or the user.present or whatever. That was all on one line. But if you put more than one type of state underneath there, it causes interesting things to happen with the YAML. So this is just another way of representing the same thing, is just doing PKG : and then dropping down and putting the installed part. Same thing can be done with users or any of the other states can be done the same way. So we're configuring both a package and a service for Nginx. And so we're saying here that we want the Nginx package to be installed. We want the service to be running. There's also something which I didn't add here, which I can now, which would be enable true, and that sets it up for it to be enabled at boot time. And then we have a require on here that says it's not going to try to manage the service unless the package is installed. Otherwise, obviously, it would fail because if it tried to run it before that, because there's the package provides the service.
It won't install it for you by putting that in there. If you require a package, it won't install it. It's not going to execute the directives that ensure that the service is running unless the package is already installed. Okay, but it won't install it like that. Just saying require won't keep it installed.
It's just going to hold off on doing anything with the service first.
Oh, okay. So it's not going to try to start a service with the package.
Yeah. And technically, I believe, we have explicit ordering now in Salt, where it's going to do things in the order in which they're defined. So technically, this isn't something that you necessarily need to do anymore, but it's just kind of habit for me, I guess. But it's also kind of good practice, just in case you don't have things in the right order. Then you'll end up with an error the first time through, and then if you run it the second time through, it would succeed. If you don't have these requisites set up to where it would.
You're moving away from where the ordering doesn't matter in the file and moving forward.
No, we just support both now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's just either way is supported. Just for the people that need a more order based setup, if they're more comfortable with that we have that, but you can still set up requisites it'll give you a little bit more flexibility if you like that as well. But basically both options are available, and neither one takes away from the other. So
It looks like you have three examples there. So running looks like it could have that : true as well. Is that not the case?
no, because running is the same as if I were this is doing the same thing as if I did service dot running from before. It's a similar setup to the other ones I had. It's just like I mentioned just a couple minutes ago, if you have multiple types of states defined under the same top level all the time, if you have more than one short single line declaration there, it just doesn't load the data the way in the proper data structure for Salt to manage it. So we'll get odd errors if you do more than one of these what we call short declarations, where they're not split up on multiple lines. And that's just a function of how PyYAML loads the data, and it being loaded in a different data structure than Salt expects. So.
What translates or synchronizes or whatever, like the package name, which I'm assuming is like applicant install package name, yum package name.
Yeah. So we have the same. That's actually I was actually just actually going to talk about that now. For package management, for service management, and probably a few other things as well. Although they're not jumping to mind right now. We have there's a way if you're writing Salt code, where you could tell the module to act as this module based on like the grains or whatever, based on certain things to identify a host operating system or or the operating system and version. So we have a number of different modules that if it's CentOS, this is the package management. And then so basically platforms that are not CentOS would ignore that. If you want to install a package on the command line, you can just type package.pkg.install, and it's already done this resolution when it starts up, where it chooses the correct package backend or service backend based on the platform.
So how would you know, like in this case, Nginx, now my guess is
It may not always be the same
Right.
package name. Yeah, in that case, and it was just a little bit more involved of an example than I wanted to get into with all the other things I was going to talk about. But in those cases, you could do some stuff with Pillar that would disambiguate the package names based on platforms, so that you had we have some examples of that in the documentation using something that we call formulas. That you may want to read up on. It uses Jinja and Pillar to do all that kind of package name disambiguation.
Is there already a catalog of this Debian package equals this salt package name, I guess would be?
Well, it's not a salt package name. It's just this is literally just telling you to install Nginx. So for something like if you want to do Apache, there's different names. Like I think Ubuntu would call it Apache 2.
Yeah.
FreeBSD would call it, HTTPD for CentOS. So that's something where that's why I didn't choose Apache, because I didn't want to have to go and explain something else. But if you look at
So that'd be up to me then to list out what the package.
yeah, and we actually have a lot of that done for you already. We have a whole other like set of over 50 little mini Git repositories that have like that kind of stuff already done for you for Apache and for things like that. And they may yet be incomplete because they're up on they may have just been done with CentOS and Ubuntu in mind, and so somebody could go and submit a pull request and say, hey, I just added Solaris, I just added FreeBSD or whatever, and
So look to see if your thing's in there, and if it's not, write it yourself.
yeah, but the like most of the legwork's probably already been done for you if it's something like that.
Yeah, if it doesn't work, then check.
Yeah. But yeah, I just did a really. I was kind of trying to focus on talking about as much topics, so I picked something that would be the same everywhere by design. So as far as the configuration example here, does all of this make sense so far? Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and I'm gonna save the file because I did make a change to it. Let's see. And actually, let's do a salt. We're just going to do a state.sls nginx. Actually, we'll do a test.true first as well. Or test equals true, not test.true. And you notice a lot of these are failing because like the service doesn't exist, and it's trying to check if the service, is going to be changed. So the fact that these are failing is kind of, I guess, expected. But actually, it looks like it didn't quite finish by the time I did the scroll back. And it looks like, there we go, CentOS 6. Looks like Ubuntu already had, that's weird. There's some sort of Nginx init script or something there already because it showed up in the service list, which is odd. Okay. So if we run it without the test equals true, we see all the, oops, look, it still wasn't done yet.
Could you repeat the command?
Yeah, it was the same like salt and then the asterisk in quotes, obviously, and then state.sls because we're running a single SLS file, and then nginx without the .sls because these SLS names, they just have the SLS part removed and then they're path based. So because it's just in the root there and it's called nginx.sls, it just becomes nginx as the SLS name. So we see all these here. We see that we have some new packages installed, and we have the service running. Now, if I were to go ahead and if I go ahead now and I could run just some functions like service.status nginx, and this just checks to see whether it returns true if the service is running, returns false if it's not running. And for some reason, it's returning nothing right now. That's lovely. Let's see. Yep. Okay. Oh. That was the problem. I tried to run the service.status, but I still had the state.sls there. So it was looking for a SLS file called service/whatever and didn't find it. Which it should have spit out an error there, but that might not be available in the code that's installed here. That might have been something that was fixed recently. So if I just installed star for all hosts service.status nginx. Okay, we see true because we have the service running out everywhere. Yes.
Yeah, I got a question. So,
Yep.
When we installed nginx on all these different nodes, I kind of went back through the list and they all installed different versions, probably
Whatever's in the repository, yeah.
So is there a way to like force a certain like if you want to say I want all of those
Yep.
to be 1.1
Yes, you can. Now, you wouldn't necessarily be able to just say 1.1 because the version pinning that we if we want to pin it at a version, you have to use the version string for that package. And so, like the Ubuntu ones, they always put like version number -Ubuntu 0, whatever, you know. So you're not going to be able to use the same version string for everything. If you wanted to just use the one configuration parameter or one configuration directive to install a specific version on all hosts, again, that'd be something you may want to do with Pillar, and then you could specify the version number for that as a Pillar variable, like nginx_version, right? You could create a Pillar called that, and then you would just put curly brace Pillar_version as the version instead of that. And that's just needed. We just need to do it that way because we can't predict. There's no way for us to reliably tell what it is unless we use the string that the package management system provides for that platform. So, and that's not actually supported on all package management systems. I think it's supported in CentOS and with Yum. So it's supported with Yum. It's supported with apt. It's supported with Pacman for those Arch Linux users out there. It's supported with Zypper on OpenSUSE, I believe, and that may be it. Off the top of my head, I can't think of any others. But yeah, you can do that. If you look at the package state documentation, there's actually a whole list of parameters, extra parameters that I didn't use all of them here, obviously, but yeah, version is one of them, and that you can use, and it'll tell you, I believe, in the documentation which platforms that's supported on as well, in case there's any that I missed. So So what we can do here, let's do some more commands here. We can actually confirm that it's listening. And because the commands are different, I'm going to do this on Linux only. You see, here's just our Linux box is returning. You can see that it's listening. So if we want to see what the actual page, I'm going to go ahead and take that CentOS box, and I'm going to tell it to give me the grains.item IPv4, and that's going to give me all of the IP addresses that are on there. I'm going to grab the public IP, and then you can see there's the default Nginx page. So okay, all right. So we've done a little bit, just basic kind of sysadmin DevOps type stuff where we're managing files and software. That's something that Salt's very good at, but I want to take a little bit of time. How are we doing on time? Do we have? Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can take a break. Yeah.
Okay.
So we left off with the configuration management stuff. I kind of wanted to go over some of the other cool things that you can do with Salt. I mentioned briefly at the beginning of, that Salt has an event system. So basically, pretty much everything that Salt does goes over this event bus, and you can also send it. You can also send events, you can also create your own events and send them, and configure Salt to take actions based on these events. Salt calls that the reactor system. So the reactor, if you look at your the master config file at the very bottom, I put some stuff in there. So I defined a couple different events here. So what happens if you send an event called stop_service or touch_file, these are just very simple examples. It's going to then fire off it's going to run these SLS files based on the data that it received. And so for instance, if we look at this stop service, let's see. It looks just a little bit different from what it's a little bit different than running like a state to actually manage a command. In this case, any of the functions that you would run, they're preceded with command dot. So, and actually, this should be stop service. Actually, no, this doesn't matter what this is called. Actually, this could be anything. So if we run stop service, I'm just going to put there just for consistency's sake. It's going to run a service.stop function. The targeted node is going to be, if you look at this data ID, that is the node that sent the event to the master. So, and then the data that you pass along the event bus is stored in data. It's kind of redundant, but so it's going to this would be the same thing as if we were from the master. If we were to run salt and then a specific node name followed by service.stop and then whatever the service name would be. So this is the SUSE box here. I have this, I'm already logged into it. So if you want to log into one of your other nodes right now and try this, if you run salt, what's the command here?
You can give us just a moment to log in really quick.
Oh yeah, I'm trying to find it anyway, so I didn't put it in my notes. So I'm gonna have to remember. And there's gonna be a set of links that I'm gonna distribute at the end here. It'll have a link to the event system and reactor system documentation, so you can get a more thorough explanation of it. But I'm not going to explain it too much here, other than what I already have. If you want more, there's certainly plenty more documentation. So if you want to kick off, you can actually run any salt function that you could run from the master on one minion by using salt call, and then you just leave off the target notation like the host name glob or whatever, because you're running it directly on that minion. So to send an event back up to the event bus of the master, you run salt-call event.fire_master, and then you pass, the next argument would be the data that you want to pass. So you can pass a simple string, or you could pass a string representation of a Python data structure. So if you wanted to pass like a dictionary, you could do it on the command line, as long as you had like a Python dictionary string in string format. You could pass an actual data structure. But for right now, for this example, I'm just going to do, and there's actually an example of passing a Python dictionary in those documentation links if you want to take a look at them. So I'm going to run event.firemaster, and then I don't know why it's like this, but it's the data first and then the event name. To me, it makes sense to do it the opposite way. But so we're going to say, if we notice in the back here, we notice we had the stop service. That's the tag name, the event name. So we have the event name and then the data that we're going to pass. The data that we're going to pass ends up in this data, part of the dictionary. So data here would be Nginx. That would be the argument that we pass, and we could add additional arguments, one per line, and they just get passed as command line arguments, just as if you were running it on the CLI. So running here from that box, and it returned back with true. Now if I were to just right away run here, like run salt call service.status Nginx. There's a little bit of info level logging there, but you can see it says false. And if I go back to the master, and I do a salt asterisk service status Nginx, you can see it's still running everywhere else, but the box that stopped it. I mean, most people aren't going to do it, use this to stop their services, but it's just kind of a really simple example of how you can create an event, and then like if I wanted to, I could even pass a host name and have one box shut off a service on another box, because you're initiating events, or you're firing events off to the master, and the master has already been configured to say, if I see this event, I'm going to do X with it. So, that's one simple example. The other example I have shows how you can just target a single box. And that was just called touch file. And notice I get this is running a command.run function, again preceded with the command dot, because that's just the way the reactor syntax is. So in this one, we're going to target just Ubuntu hosts, and because it's not a glob, there's this line that says expression form or exper form is grain. So we're telling it, that we're telling it that we're using a grain to target here, and we're going to touch whatever file. The argument that we're going to pass to the command.run is touch, and then whatever whatever we pass to the function. So if I do temp foo.text and then touch file, before I run that, we're just going to run a command to make sure that yeah, I'll go back in. I haven't run it yet, so thanks for the heads up there. So I'm gonna do we can see that none of the nodes has this file. So, and I did call it foot.txt. So I ran this again. I'm running it from the SUSE box. But if I go back to if I go back here and run that same command now, we notice that the Ubuntu box at the bottom now has a file, and that's just another kind of example of taking actions based on events. There's probably more complicated examples, but this kind of was just meant to demonstrate kind of the basic functionality of it. So one thing that a lot of people, we find a lot of people are using this for is continuous code deployment. So if you have a Git server and that Git server is running Salt, you can actually put a Salt call command in your post receive hook. So the post receive hook will then fire up that command that tells the master, hey, go deploy from this. It'll run in an SLS file that'll then kick off a deployment based off of the files in that Git server. So you can basically have it so whenever you push to the master repository, the code is automatically deployed. That's something a lot of people are using that for. So that brings us pretty much to the end of the demo. There's a couple of features that I did want to touch on, but I didn't really have time to demo. Then I know we all have to go home at some point. So there was the SSH-based transport that I think was brought up earlier, but so by default, like I mentioned before, we're using this publisher subscriber networking library called ZeroMQ, but you can actually run it without an agent over SSH now, as of version 0.17, which has been out for about a month or so. So you can set up a roster of authentication info, and then Salt SSH. You'd run, instead of using Salt as the command, you run Salt-SSH, and instead of using like the list of nodes that you would get with that Salt-key that we did before, it uses the roster that you've already defined in order to figure out what its nodes are that it has access to, and then how to auth to those nodes. So you can do that all without any software running on the minion. All it needs is Python, which is pretty much standard. So Python 2. It's not. For us, well, using the SSH, using Salt SSH, you can do both password and key authentication. So. I'm not certain. To be honest, it's still new enough where I haven't got to play with it as much as I'd like. I've done some pretty basic things with that, and that's about it. But yeah, it's so far a lot of the people that I know that are using it, they've deployed some sort of key.
I just looked it up really quickly. There's a
Yeah.
SaltStack's SSH off, and they said that
Oh no, that's actually for that's something different. That's for actually deploying SSH keys in SaltStates.
oh, okay.
So you can manage keys.
Okay.
Yeah, this is replacing the default transport with SSH and running it agentless.
Okay. And then
Yeah.
this is for managing access.
Yeah. So Salt has like at last count I think, and this is probably out of date information. There was something close to about like 70 or so different states like to manage different things, and some of them are only applicable on Windows. There's a bunch of states that are specific to Windows. That would have no wouldn't work on a Unix based system. But so that's just one of them. You can manage your authentication and you can manage keys with the SSH auth state.
Yeah.
Just like you can manage users with the user state and packages with the package state, etc. Yeah, just so that's one cool new feature it hasn't been around that long. There may still be some rough edges on it, but it's been something that a lot of people have requested, and the feedback so far has been pretty good. You do lose a little bit of the speed that you get out of using Serum Q, but we've been able to get it to where the amount of like the difference in speed is really negligible. It's maybe a few seconds or so. So it's not anything that's going to give you any severe performance degradement. Another brand new thing also in 0.17, we have a web interface now. It's called Halite. That's a little bit more obscure Salt reference. It's a type of rock salt. Yeah. So Halite is it can use CherryPy, and it can use a couple other different Python-based web servers, and you can there's instructions. There's actually a link in the list of links that I'll that I'm gonna give to you guys when we're done here. That shows you how to enable it. But if you have a Halite installed, all you need to do is set up like one or two configuration parameters in your master config file that says, one of them I believe says that that tells you that basically turns on the web interface. The other one tells it which port, and I think if you don't tell which port, it's going to try to bind to port 8080 I think by default. So technically you may not even need to set the port, but so it may only be just a one-line change you need to make to the master config, and that turns on the web interface, provided that you have the Halite itself is another Python module, so it just installs as a Python module. If it's available in your Python path, you can go ahead and use it. So so that pretty much wraps up everything that I had to talk about. I'm going to go ahead and throw some links up here right now. And so there's a short URL there, and this is just a GitHub gist, where if you go to that short URL, it'll take you to this page, and where you can. Yeah, certainly. Is that good? Yeah, sorry. So this just has my if you want to find me on IRC, it has my username there. We have a couple different IRC channels. General discussion and support is just #salt on Freenode. If you'd like to start getting into development, you have a lot more of both the employees and some of the community developers hang out in salt-devel, and we also have a mailing list hosted on Google Groups. These are all pretty active. If you So if you find you're not getting your question answered in IRC, usually if you ask it on the mailing list, there's pretty you get a pretty quick answer. We're talking like hours or maybe a day, depending on how obscure the question is. Sometimes things go unanswered long, but usually not for long. It's a very active community. And the main docs page I included, and then all these links below are just links on the docs that are just kind of delve deeper into some of the topics that we already discussed. There's a page there on using Salt Cloud which we didn't go over today, to spin up VMs and destroy them when you're done. That can all be managed from the master using the command line. And stuff on the reactor and SSH and Halide as well. There's also a scheduler. So if you have certain types of things that you want to run every so often, instead of putting the salt command into cron, there's a scheduler built into Salt. So you could actually configure it alongside some of your other configuration. You can actually specify a schedule of when you want to run certain commands. So that's pretty much it. Has anybody got any other questions? Anything else that they want to clear up or didn't see covered and wonder if Salt can do it?
What was the short URL?
Oh, it's right here at the top. Hold on. There. That font big enough?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Well, I was curious about
Yeah.
Black Eye. So it's an open source project, but there's also a commercial company.
Yes.
Like what sort of things do your customers use the commercial services for?
So it is an Apache 2 licensed project, and it's like every part of it, including the web interface, is open source. We don't have any stuff that is open, that's just open core, and so for our customers, we're not giving them any we're not like hiding any features that the community can't have. What we provide for them is just for our enterprise customers is number one, a separate package that's not as bleeding edge because it's supposed to be used in the enterprise, and then additionally we've done some stuff that's just integration stuff. So I'll actually be with a client actually here in Chicago all next week doing some integration work and adding Apache Zookeeper support, which we don't yet have. So sometimes we'll have new support that gets added and makes it back upstream. And so our enterprise customers get they get kind of like they can get support stuff, they can get support for things that they need that isn't part of the community without waiting for the community to come up with it. And then we can also run there's a bunch of other things I didn't even talk about, you can actually the pillar data, the user defined variables, you can define that in YAML. There's actually about half a dozen or more, maybe close to a dozen other ways of introducing pillar data. So you can do it. You can actually have a MySQL database that provides pillar data, or maybe not MySQL, maybe just Mongo. I'm not sure. I'd have to look. But you can have a bunch of different ways to get these user-defined variables. So let's say one of our customers has a very some sort of data store that they want to tie into Salt. We would write something that could interface that with and make it expose it as pillar data, or So a lot of it's just kind of custom development work and integration, and then additionally we have like a I forget how many hour SLA on support requests. So So if you call or go through our support portal and request support, then you actually get like a developer or someone who actually like knows the software. Will respond, which is another thing that a lot of our clients are kind of happy about. They don't have to kind of go through 2 or 3 people before they get to somebody who can help them.
Yeah.
So, which is kind of easier to do, I guess, when you're a smaller operation. But yeah, we've had a lot of positive feedback on that already. So.
And I thought when I went to your blog back in August, I thought it was interesting. You were saying that you learned Python because of.
Oh yeah.
That's how you got it.
Like I was primarily I primarily wrote like Perl for about like 10 years. And then it's like I did like a little bit of Python, but just like some of like the basic hello world and like importing a module like to and running a couple functions and kind of played around in the interactive shell, but I never really like wrote anything serious with it or like even done any done anything more than about like a 10 or 15 line script just to play around with it. And then when I was evaluating, I evaluated a few different at my last job, a few different configuration management platforms. And when Saul came around, I'm like, well, I guess if I want to, like, I played around with it a little bit, and I'm like, well, it doesn't have support for X, I need to write it, so I guess I need to learn Python. So I took about like 2 weeks of like reading and playing around and like made a commit like the first day I tried, and that was then made about another 800 or 900 commits since then. Wow. So yeah, I've extended like a couple different, I've written like extensions for a couple different configuration management platforms trying to get them to work, and just it's always the easiest for me. If you're really big into if you're really familiar with Ruby, and not so familiar with Python, then maybe like your mileage may vary, but like within just within like a couple weeks of learning Python, it was pretty easy to get in there and write and augment the existing support and write a couple of little custom modules. Yeah.
And that led to your current job.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. At one point I ended up at one point I ended up being like the fourth or fifth top committer, and after about a year and a half of contributions, and it'd be kind of like a weekend thing, come home on the weekend and write some code, and that would basically leveraged a bunch of weekend hobbyist stuff into getting offered a job, and not like asking for it. I actually was pursued for like the first time in my life, which is kind of weird, but yeah, it's very fun project to write code for. Very, very easy to get into, and if anybody probably don't have time today, but if anybody wants to kind of delve deeper into like how to write custom, like a couple months down the line, we could have like a breakout session or something. I could show like how to write custom modules and states and stuff like that, and we're also having. I would probably be yelled at if I didn't mention this. We're actually having a user conference in Salt Lake City the last week of January. So I would actually be yelled at a lot more if I said yes. So I'm going to go ahead and say no. You see that the Tom, the guy who created the project, he's been asked these questions a few times, and he swears no. I don't know if I believe him or not, but he says no. But the majority of the employees do live in the Salt Lake City area. The main office is just about 10 minutes south of the city, and yeah, so I'm one of 2 remote employees. The other one lives in New York. So, but otherwise, everybody's out in Salt Lake City. It does sound like quite a bit of a coincidence if it's not. I mean,
when's your next log meeting?
Next Saturday.
Cool.
at Batavia Public Library at 9 o'clock in the morning. Yeah. Well, it's a little bit earlier than a lot of other ones, but I've done ones later in the day and nobody comes. Like people actually come at 9 o'clock out there. So, you know, if I yeah. Yeah. So.
Is there a topic?
None yet. I'm always open. Like last month, we had somebody from somebody else from Fermilab actually. I was just talking to her earlier about it. There's a guy who works out there. Just kind of started up there recently, but he used to work for Cray, and so he did a presentation on like the history of supercomputers, and yeah, that was pretty fun. But we don't have anything lined up yet. Anybody wants to, they can contact me.